I'm going to tell you something that might sound strange coming from a guy who has spent over 20 years helping people buy and sell homes right here in San Jose. Don't rent your home. So now before you click off, let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. I'm not saying that rental property in this market is a bad idea. A good single family home in San Jose with the right tenant is still a strong long-term asset. Now I believe that 100%. What I'm saying is this: don't rent your home the way most people rent their home. So let me explain. Because in California right now, the way most people do it will cost you in ways you are completely unprepared for. Now, I've watched San Jose homeowners hand over their keys with the best intentions. Maybe they're relocating for work, maybe they're moving up and keeping the starter home, or they're building an ADU and thinking it's just passive income. And then finding themselves in legal situations that took months and tens of thousands of dollars to resolve. Not because they were careless and not because they chose bad tenants on purpose, but because California has quietly, law by law, year by year, transformed being a landlord from a casual side arrangement into a highly regulated profession. And nobody sent you the memo before you signed that lease. Well, this video is that memo. And stick around to the end, because the last thing I'm going to share with you is the one that will genuinely catch you off guard. It involves a single text message, one text, and 58% of the San Jose landlords and brokers involved answered it wrong. Illegally wrong, according to the law. I'm Kip Barnard, a licensed real estate broker, and I've been doing this for over 20 years here in Silicon Valley. I've sat on the ethics committee at the county for over a decade, and I've managed a top producing office overseeing billions of dollars in sales. And what I love more than anything is sharing my experience and telling people what other agents are afraid to say. So let's get into it. Let me start with a real person who experienced a very real situation here in San Jose, because I think this story grounds everything I'm about to tell you. Her name is Angela Toe. She's 80 years old and lives here in San Jose. Now, Angela signed a lease with a tenant and handed over the keys to her single-family home. What she had absolutely no way of knowing was that her tenant quietly converted that 3-bedroom house to accommodate 10 people. The living room became a bedroom, the basement got packed, a makeshift tent went up in the backyard as additional rental space. He was running a business inside her property, collecting money from all those people living there, while simultaneously stopping the rent payments to her. Now, by the time it surfaced, he owed her more than $40,000 in back rent. Her words to the reporter were heartbreaking. She trusted this tenant, and he used that against her. And here's what makes it worse. Records show this wasn't the first time he'd done it. He'd run this exact same scam at a different San Jose property back in 2022. Unpermitted walls, dividers, evicted from that one too. Now this guy knew the system. He knew how long evictions take, and somewhere out there right now, he's probably doing it again. Now, tenant attorneys actually have a name for people like this. They call them professional tenants. And it's exactly what it sounds like. People who have figured out how to exploit the gap between a landlord's good faith and the complexity of California's tenant protection laws. They know which complaints to file, they know the timelines, and they move from property to property and run the same playbook every single time. And here's what nobody tells you before you hand over those keys. A basic credit check won't catch them. Credit tells you whether someone pays their bills. What you actually want to know is whether they've been in court. A thorough tenant screening, one that goes beyond credit and looks for prior lawsuits, collections, claims, and court records where available, will surface that pattern far more than a basic credit check. Now, in Angela's case, records showed this tenant had been evicted from another San Jose property just 2 years earlier for the exact same thing. The information was out there, but nobody looked for it. Now, most tenants are not running unlicensed rooming houses in your living room. This is obviously a very extreme case, but the reason this story matters isn't the tenant. It's what it reveals about how exposed a private homeowner can be when they walk into this without understanding the legal environment that they're now operating in. And that environment has changed dramatically here in California. So here are the 4 things that are catching regular San Jose homeowners completely off guard right now. Number 1, the blank checkbox that costs you everything. So what I mean by this is most people who own a single-family home in San Jose believe they're exempt from California's statewide rent control law. And they might be right, but probably not for the reason they think. In 2019, California passed AB 1482, the Tenant Protection Act. It caps how much you can raise rent each year, and it requires what's called just cause to remove a tenant after 12 months. Single-family homes are supposed to be exempt, and that's where most people stop reading. They think, I own a house, not an apartment building, this doesn't apply to me. But here's the problem. That exemption only applies if you gave the tenant a very specific written notice before the lease was signed. Not a summary, not something close. The exact statutory language required under California law. Many lease templates include a checkbox for this. If that box was left unchecked, even if there's other language in the lease, a court may find your tenant is fully protected. Rent caps, just cause requirements. You cannot simply decide not to renew and ask them to leave. And where do most private homeowners get their leases? Zillow, or a free legal forms website, or a template a friend used 4 years ago. Now, the overwhelming majority of these leases either don't have the exemption language at all, or they have a checkbox that nobody knew to check. So here's how this plays out. Homeowner takes a job out of state, downloads a lease off the internet, and everything seems fine for a year or two. Then they want their house back. The assignment has ended, or they want to sell, or a family member needs it. They send a polite non-renewal notice, and that's when they find out. Because the exemption language was never in the original lease, they don't get to just do that. They're looking at relocation assistance requirements, just cause protections, and a conversation with an attorney that would have cost a few $100s before anyone signed anything, but now it will cost significantly more to untangle. The fix is simple. Use a lease from the California Apartment Association, or have a landlord-tenant attorney prepare one. Confirm that the exemption language is in there before anyone signs. One time and you're done. So here's number 2. The 12-month clock, and it may already be running. Even if your lease is airtight, even if the exemption notice was perfectly executed, there's a second timeline that most single-family landlords have never heard of. Once a tenant has been in your California rental property for 12 months, just cause eviction protections kick in automatically. After that date, you cannot send a non-renewal notice and expect someone to leave. You need a legally recognized reason. Now, if a tenant isn't paying rent, violated the lease, or caused damage, those are at-fault reasons. You've got grounds. That part is very straightforward. But what if your tenant has done absolutely nothing wrong and you just want your property back? That's a no-fault eviction, and it comes with requirements most private landlords don't know about until they've already in it. The most common scenario, owner move-in. You want your house back because you want to live in it. Now that's valid, but the rules have gotten significantly stricter. The owner or a qualifying family member has to move in within 90 days, has to occupy it as their primary residence for at least 12 consecutive months. And California law requires you to pay the tenant 1 month's rent in relocation assistance before they leave. Here's the trap inside the trap. If you do an owner move-in, actually move in for 6 or 8 months, and then decide to re-rent or sell, you've potentially exposed yourself to a wrongful eviction lawsuit. The tenant you removed has grounds to claim you misused the process, and people do get sued for exactly this. So here's the practical takeaway. If you've got a tenant who's been in your property for 10 months and you're thinking about any kind of change, selling, reclaiming it, adjusting the terms, month 10 is when you have maximum flexibility. Month 13 is when you have a lawyer and a check to write. That window is real and it closes quietly. This brings us to number 3, the ADU trap. Now, San Jose added more ADUs per capita during the building boom than almost any other market in the state. Garage conversions, backyard cottages, junior ADUs attached to the main house. The city encouraged it, and homeowners responded in massive numbers. And most of them are operating under legal assumptions that are just wrong. Here's the one that gets people hardest. You built an ADU, you rented out the main house to one tenant, and you rent out the ADU to a separate tenant. And you're thinking, I own a single family home, so the exemption applies to both. It doesn't. California law explicitly states that the single family home exemption is invalidated when there's more than one dwelling unit on the same lot being rented as separate tenancies. Now, the moment you're renting both independently, you've lost the exemption for both units. Both are now subject to rent caps and just cause requirements after 12 months, regardless of what your leases say. And for homeowners with unpermitted ADUs, which is much more common than you think, the unpermitted status doesn't give you a faster path to removal. Trying to use it that way without following proper legal process can result in a wrongful eviction claim. The ADU was marketed as passive income, and for the homeowner who understands the legal framework, it can be. For the one who doesn't, it's a compounding liability. So finally, let's talk about number 4, the text message. I promised you this one, and I want you to pay attention. In October of 2024, a national housing watchdog organization ran a year-long undercover investigation across California. Now, they trained investigators to pose as Section 8 voucher holders, and they reached out to landlords and brokers across the state with one simple question: do you accept Section 8? And 58% of the San Jose landlords and brokers they contacted answered that question in a way that constituted illegal discrimination under California law. More than half of them. Now, since 2022, California law makes it illegal to discriminate against a prospective tenant based on their source of income, including housing choice vouchers, Section 8. This applies to all residential rental housing in California. Single-family homes are included. Now, the investigation resulted in the largest housing discrimination case in California history, 112 complaints, 203 defendants, including some of the largest real estate companies in the country. Now, here's what matters for the private homeowner renting a house in Cambrian or Almaden. Individual landlords were named, small operators who answered one text wrong, and the complaints carry attorney's fees provisions, which means tenant attorneys take these cases because there's money in it. And here's what the wrong answer looks like, and this is important because it sounds completely reasonable. You say, I prefer to work with private tenants. Wrong. I don't have experience with that program. Wrong. Let me look into that. Wrong. Any hesitation, any deflection. Wrong. California law doesn't require intent. It doesn't require malice. It requires compliance. And the correct answer to that text is always yes. Nothing else, no caveats, no explanation, just yes. And if you own a rental property right now and haven't thought through your response to that question, this is that moment. Now, here's the pushback I get all the time. Kip, I've rented my house for 5 years and nothing bad has ever happened. You're making this sound a lot scarier than it is. And my answer is honestly, you might be right. Plenty of private landlords operate informally and they never have a problem. Look, I have no dog in the fight because I'm not a property manager trying to scare you into getting your business. I sell real estate and I have no interest in managing properties for other people. But what I've seen over 20 years is that the landlords who get hurt are never the ones who expected it. It's all good until it isn't. They had good tenants for years and then circumstances changed. They needed the property back and found out they didn't have the legal standing to reclaim it cleanly. One bad interaction surfaced a documentation gap that cost them months of carrying costs and legal fees. The risk isn't that you're currently in trouble. The risk is that you're one situation away from it, and you don't know which situation that might be. Now, the cost of getting your legal foundation right, a professionally prepared lease, one conversation with a landlord-tenant attorney, a basic habit of putting things in writing is a fraction of what one misstep could cost to resolve. Now, I'm not trying to scare you out of renting your home. I'm telling you what I tell everyone who asks me what I actually think. If you've got a rental property right now and you're not sure where you stand on any of what I just covered, the exemption language, the 12-month clock, the ADU combination, your Section 8 response, start there. Get clarity before you need it, before month 12 and before that text arrives. Nothing in this video is legal advice. I'm a real estate broker, not an attorney. What I've shared is based on 20 years of watching this play out in this market. Now, if you want to talk through your specific situation or get connected with a landlord-tenant attorney I trust, reach out. I'll point you in the right direction. And if you're thinking about renting your San Jose home for the first time, talk to someone who knows this market before you do. Not to talk you out of it, to make sure you walk in with both eyes wide open. No pitch, no pressure, just a real conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.